The Sewer and Water Board meeting for Tuesday, May 11th to order. And I will get a roll call here, starting with Drivis.
Here.
Chuck.
Here.
Don Roth.
Here.
And John Moore.
Here.
Linda Mayor Olson.
Here.
And Joe Anderson. Have you got your sound on, Joe?
Just got it on.
Okay, easier. And Caitlin.
Here.
And I see Jennifer is also here for her part. All right, we have a quorum. First item is an approval of the minutes from the Water Board meeting on April 13th. Do we have any corrections, deletions, or changes that would like to be made? If not, can I get a vote for all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Well, we move down to Brenda. Do you have anybody who has indicated they wish to attend this meeting by Zoom from the public?
No, there is no public comment at this time.
All righty. Then we'll move on down to item 5, new business. A, city ditch crossing agreement. And Steve, I guess you're going to handle that, sir.
That is correct, Chair. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
All right, excellent. This item before the board is a recommendation to council for approval of an ordinance to enter into a crossing agreement with Xcel Energy. This will be a perpendicular crossing over the top of the city ditch. At this location, city ditch is about 6 feet deep. So fortunately, we are able to cross above it. There is sufficient vertical clearance to do so and maintain our required 18 inches of separation. The installation will be made via horizontal directional drilling, a picture of which is shown on the slide. You've probably seen these if you've been driving around town. They're pretty common for this type of installation.
Right.
So staff believes there is very low risk to an impact to our pipeline as part of this work. City staff will be on site during the installation to ensure proper measures are in place to protect the pipeline and be prepared for an immediate response if anything were to happen. If there is any damage to the pipeline, the contractor would be liable for all personal and property damage. In the event there is some damage to the pipeline, the good news is this is towards the end of the line. So there's actually only two downstream users on the ditch. It would not impact any raw water supplies to the Allen treatment plant. Here's the location. So as I mentioned, it's towards the downstream end where that yellow star is located, in close proximity to the termination point at Harvard Gulch. The yellow box here is where the crossing will actually occur. This is the Swedish hospital campus at the intersection of Logan and Hampton. The city ditch is the red line, and so the main actually the gas main runs to the north or towards the top of the screen on the opposite side of the ditch to the or where the new service will be connected. So here's the motion for the board chair, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any members have a question of Steve regarding this motion? If not, then I need a motion to move that the city that we recommend that the city council approve this ordinance authorizing the city to enter into a city ditch crossing license agreement with Public Service Company of Colorado, better known as Xcel, to construct a buried natural gas line over Englewood city ditch easement. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All right. Any further discussion?
I
Okay.
have a question.
Go ahead, Kate.
Steve, are there times that cross over where the city ditch and any?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the first part of that question.
You broke up, Caitlin.
Sorry, I think my internet connection's not great. Are there any other utility lines that cross the city ditch at other locations?
There are, and this would be a common type of documentation to allow that. It's actually a temporary construction license. So it gives them the permission to install, and then it basically goes away. And so for a small diameter line like this, if something were to to occur, where Xcel would need to come back out, we would enter into another temporary license. There is no, in this case, no permanent easement. But yeah, these type of crossings are common, and we have them elsewhere in the system.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Second item is item B, 5B, WIFIA loan funding application. Again, Steve, this is yours.
All right, can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
All righty, well, thank you, Chair. So this next item before the board is a recommendation council to approve a loan application and the associated application fee for loan funding under the Water Infrastructure Financing and Innovation Act, or otherwise known as WIFIA. So the WIFIA is a loan program that's administered through the EPA. The intention is to promote investment in the nation's water infrastructure. It has very favorable loan conditions, which is one of the reasons that made it really attractive for us, both on the rates that we can have access to and the favorable repayment terms, which can be up to 30 years and also allow for a 5-year deferral of repayment. So because of these favorable conditions, it does support a more proactive execution of our 10-year CIP within the rate and fee structure that this board and council approved last year. Here's some examples of the projects that were included. So this package was included in our letter of intent that we submitted to the EPA as part of this nationwide competitive process to have or to be invited to apply for these. So the good news is that we were selected for invitation, so we're working on putting that package together now. The project suite really focused on customer-facing type of projects and improvements that our customers will be able to see and feel. So that included taste, odor, or projects that can help with taste, odor, and hardness issues. It includes projects that include replacement of lead service lines, of metering improvements, and installing meters where we have flat rate customers, and also improving our raw water supply quality. And that includes the picture to the right there of piping our remaining open channel portions of City Ditch. So far as schedule, we're right in the thick of putting our application together. It's due to the EPA on July 15th. So actions preceding that are our presentation and approval by the board, or for consideration for approval by the board today. We are scheduled to take this to council for study session on June 14th, and then take it for action on June 21st. Pending successful approvals of all those, the latter part of this year will be spent actually processing the loan, and then we expect that loan execution to occur later this year with projects really kicking off in earnest next year. As part of this project, there is a $100,000 application fee that does cover the EPA's staffing and other resource needs to support the execution of the loan. And this is the motion before the board, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Steve? Okay.
Actually, Chair, I'd like to add just one clarification to this. The $100,000 application is the initial application amount. We anticipate that the final application, the total cost of the application, we've been told, is anywhere between $250,000 and $400,000. And then we're also anticipating that we're going in with one application for water and sewer, that we're likely going to need to split that into 2 applications, which means at that point in time, we will need to come forward with another $100,000 application to split it into a sewer. So much like when bonding goes to the bond market, there's the fees associated with issuing debt. This is really to cover the EPA's cost for underwriting and doing the work to issue the loans and issue the debt. So the 100,000 is really the initial start to get that process going, and then we ultimately have a final amount that we can actually roll into the loan. So I want to just make sure everybody understands that there will be more cost to this loan application than 100,000. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody else have any comments?
This John, just another question. What is you mentioned the interest rate's favorable. What's the basis for the interest rate?
Recently, they've been running under 2%. So we've been under the issue, the loans that have been issuing that we've heard from our consultants on have been below 2%. And so
And then relative to how does that compare to what would otherwise be available in the market to us?
I'm not sure what the bond market is running at right now, but it does run, it historically runs below the bond market, or
Okay.
the municipal bond market.
And is this, you know, on one hand, this application fee first it sounds quite high when you just, you know, you think of just doing paperwork or whatever, but can you just confirm that despite what it appears, these are actually low costs for actually securing this level of funding?
Yeah, the total amount is $45 million that we're borrowing. And so in the end, it ends up being it does seem like a big number, but it's a small number when you consider the total number that we're borrowing. I think one of the other things that Steve touched on a little bit is this application, this loan is almost like a line of credit. So whereas when you issue bonds, you immediately start paying interest on those bonds. For this, what happens is you get approved, and then we have a 5-year period with which we can draw upon the total loan amount. So if we draw 30 million in year 3, we haven't paid interest in the first 2 years for that loan amount. We don't start paying interest until we actually draw on the money. And then if we choose not to draw the full amount, then we don't get charged for that full amount.
And then let me ask my question again about the basis for the interest rate, because does that mean, will we be subject to fluctuating interest rates? And so it'll be the short-term rate in effect 3 years from now when we go to borrow that money, or how's that going to work?
My understanding is this, when we close the loan, we close at that rate. And so then that rate applies for our duration of the 5 years that we can draw on it. We draw on it at that rate. And so for right now, the rates are moving, but they have generally been below 2% for these types of loans, or from what our consultant has informed us.
So, I mean, I would say if we truly are able to lock in access to that kind of rate right now, that given the increasing interest rate environment we're kind of expected to be in, at least I expect we'll be in, again, I do think this is a really good opportunity for us.
Yeah, Steve, I got that right? That it does lock in at the beginning.
Yes, that's correct, Peter.
Yeah.
All right, wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, it is a very favorable program from the federal government.
Okay. Thank you, John. Anybody else wish to comment? All right, can I get a motion to recommend that City Council approve a resolution authorizing the city to submit a loan application and appropriate amount of $100,000 application fee for a WIFIA funding?
I'd be happy to make that motion. So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second by Caitlin. All right. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Next item is item C, the proposed 2022 CIP budget. And I think that's Peter's.
That is correct. Can you all see my screen?
Not yet.
All right, wait, hang on. I think I have to click one more thing. There we go. Okay, how about now?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay. So let me get on here. So this is our, we're working on the process of developing our 5-year capital plan for water and sewer. We did bring the initial discussion of our capital plan to council. I believe it was a couple of weeks ago, where we went over the plan as it was formulated last year. And so if you recall, last year was the first year we had the master plan, where we were able to actually put some funding in place to try and determine what the 5, 10, and 15-year capital plan would be. Having been spent a year in working with the capital plan and really starting to refine it and understand what the more specific needs are for the utility, we have come back with we're working on our next iteration of that plan, and within that is a direct tie to funding through the WIFIA loan program. So that is what we think will allow us to front load a number of those deferred projects and be able to fund them partially with rates and then partially with loan application. With WIFIA, the WIFIA loans will fund 49% of the total project cost. And so we still will need to come up with the other 51%, but we do have a fund balance in the water fund. And we did include the capital investment fee and then rate increases to help us accomplish this as defined in the model that we went through last year. One of the things that we've been doing is we've been really looking at figuring out what the categorization of our projects are. And it's been about over the last 8 weeks that we've really dialed in on a more immediate term focus on 3 things that are customer facing: hardness, taste, and odor. And as I get on Nextdoor every now and then and I see what some of the discussion points are, there seems to be a consistency around people's comments on taste and odor and hardness. A lot of comments about putting in water softeners in homes and things like that. And given that, and it sounds like that's been something that has been a challenge for Englewood customers for several decades. And so we're working with a consultant to help us strategize a more strategic plan to addressing taste, odor, and hardness. And there are 3 main components to that. One being change in the source of supply location, and that is to pull more water from the base of Chatfield Dam as opposed to out of Union Ave pump station, because the water quality at the base of Chatfield is generally better. The source water quality is generally better than at Union Ave, especially in the summertime. With that comes a capital improvement of piping city ditch. So if we can close that conduit from the point of diversion at the base of Chatfield Dam all the way to the Allen plant, then there's no external influence, or there's no there's limited hydraulic restriction on that water, that we can essentially translate that water quality without any negative impact from being an open ditch to the Allen plant. So that's the second piece of it. A third piece is operational changes. So moving the water through our distribution system and through our tanks is something that we are evaluating as we develop a full model of the system. So as we get a full pipes model, we can start to model how water moves through the system and identify locations where maybe there's a water age issue because it's a dead end line and there's not a real strong demand on that pipe. And so that would drive a project to either loop that, or if we can't loop it, stick a hydrant on the end of it and put in a flushing program. Out of all of that, out of those changes, we then would turn to the plant and look at what kinds of actual treatment processes that we would put in, including a softening process. And if we can address a number of these issues with the source water quality, maybe that helps limit the extent of the softening process that we put in the treatment plant. And so that's really one of the main shifts from last year to this year that has come about from our developed understanding of the system, our water rights portfolio, our source water system, and how we can potentially use it differently than it's been used in the past. So those are 3 main parts of the customer facing. The other 2 are metering and lead service lines, which is something that we've been talking about. Those 2 go hand in hand, and that's a focus that we want to make sure we're ahead of on the lead service lines. We want to get ahead of the regulatory requirement on that, and on metering, I think we all have talked about that maybe we're a little bit behind because we still have flat rate accounts, and we'd like to get rid of those. On the internal side, we have regulatory compliance and safety. Those are more operational focuses. I think the largest one here is asset management. And that's the reinvestment in our infrastructure. So if you take the pump stations, that's an investment in deferred maintenance and deferred, really getting in place programs to help replace lines, replace valves on a routine basis, so that over the course of so many years we've gone through the entire system and we're not just left with a huge capital need all at once because we haven't addressed it routinely year over year. On the water fund side, here's just some of the basics that come from our finance department. The estimated cash balance is 20 million on January 1 of this year. We project another 12 million in revenues. Our estimated uses are 18.6. We'll probably end up spending under that because of just the timing of the time it takes to actually execute on capital. And then it'll leave us with a December fund balance of 13.7 million. So we anticipate that will probably be a little bit higher, again, because of the delay. The Tier 1 capital request for 2022 total 8.691 million. And you can see where this listing of those projects in 2022, and then you can see them out for the next 5 years. And the couple big ones are the raw water supply improvements. The large majority of that is piping city ditch, which will have a whole process associated with it, because I think not everybody to the south of us will necessarily be pleased if we're piping city ditch, but there is a true there's a true driver for the customers of Englewood. And then if you move down to the Allen water treatment process improvements, you can see there's the initial 1.5 million in 2022, and then those significant numbers over 3, 4, 5, and 6. And within that is softening and some other chemical improvements and filter improvements. And so that's where we think if we front load those two things, we think we can actually, in 3 years, have a pretty significant effect on people's taste and odor and hardness for their water. This next slide is Tier 2. The slide in your packet, the total line was incorrect, so we've updated that. We'll get that replaced and sent out to you. It had a residual from a previous presentation. But essentially, these are some of the Tier 2 projects that we'd be looking at, which are communications or to our remote sites, getting communication upgrades in place. An annual valve replacement, that's where we want to start going around and replacing valves, exercising the valves, seeing which ones break, and then replacing them as they break. And then an operations complex. And at 6.5 million, we think that this is probably somewhat low in terms of funding. We're working with Public Works and Parks to really assess the operational and space needs for the 3 departments together, likely out at the service center. Those buildings out there are pretty old. And then when you get to the Allen plant, we put in a trailer last year, and we spent today trying to figure out where we're gonna stuff people because the trailer's full and we're just running out of space. And so that's something that we anticipate will be a good project to fund through WIFIA loan funding as well, which will really help us get to the point where we can support this the staff that really is executing on these large projects and this new way of operating the system. On the sewer fund side, cash balance is 7.285. Projected revenue is 20 million. Estimated uses is 24 million, which gives us an end of the year balance of 3.3 million. The Tier 1 capital request for 2022 is 9.628 million. And so what you can see is there's a discrepancy there. This is where in the financial plans that we went through last year for the water and the sewer funds, we planned for issuing debt. We actually had originally planned to issue debt for the sewer fund in 2021. We've determined that we can actually wait until 2022, and a lot of that has to do with the timing of execution of projects. And so that's where the WIFIA funding will help us, we'll close that gap so that we can continue to fund as we need to. The vast majority of this funding is for South Platte Renew, which is 50% of the share of the capital projects of South Platte Renew. You can see those numbers there. And the collection improvements are actually fairly limited. It's a number of lining projects. Since our collection system is all gravity, there's not a significant amount of investment necessary. It's manhole lining and it's sewer line lining. As we talked about some of the funding options, if you recall some of these charts from when we were talking about the needs for these projects, if you go to the lower middle chart, anything that's in red is debt, and we are working on trying to make that debt number more manageable in the long term. And so that's through not only the rates and fees that we've developed, but also evaluating agreements that we have and ensuring that we're capturing the revenue that we are due as a city based on what those agreements allow for. Basically our funding comes from cash, WIFIA. If we don't have enough from there, we will likely engage with state revolving funds that will come after WIFIA. And then the bond market is always an option. And then under grants, there are a number of programs right now that are identifying, federal programs that are identifying investment in water and wastewater infrastructure that we are tracking, and determining how that fits into our long-term capital planning and addressing issues, for example, lead service lines. We have a funding gap long-term for lead service lines. So if there's a federal program to fund lead service line replacement, that's where we'd be really targeting that to help us bridge the gap on that funding. South Platte Renew, this is just a summary of the projects that we have from 2022 to 2026. These are a lot of investment in deferred, just asset replacement and asset renewal. The third line down, which is a big number, 10 million, that's our ChemP UV improvements. That's to meet Regulation 85, which we have a compliance deadline on of 2023. So we have to have that in place in order to be compliant with the new regulations. You can see a similar project towards the bottom of an expansion of the O&M complex. Again, over there, we're running out of space to actually, there it's much more focused on internal maintenance and centralizing our staffing. We have people somewhat spread out and not optimal locations. And then there's just a number of continual reinvestment in the plant site itself. You can see some other examples in here. There's a number of electrical replacement projects. EI&C is our electric and integration, and then other process replacements that are all here. The total of which over the 5-year is generally right around $69 million. 69,087,763. So that's 50-50 shared between the two cities, which means City of Englewood share over 5 years is $34.5 million. And that is the quick summary of where we're headed from a capital perspective. And we'd love to get your feedback in terms of some of the initiatives that we're focusing this funding on, and any other thoughts in terms of our approach.
Well, it's open to you members. Got any questions of Peter here? Comments? My, things are quiet. All righty. Anything else you want, Pete?
Well, if this is looking good to the board, we'll move forward with it in this direction, and really try to get some immediate short-term, I think, wins that hopefully in the next 3 years people will no longer be saying, you know, that Englewood water is not the best water out there, and will have a real effect.
Yeah, you agree.
I think we have a plan for it. And if it all works out like we anticipate it, we could be there.
Well, good. I'm sure us old timers could remember that. Those of us who've been here a long time, and then the new members, same thing as you see on that next door thing on on your computer, how much they complain about it. It's going all the time. Very good. Anybody else want to make any comments?
I have a question. So you're talking about encapsulating the city ditch in a conduit. Will that also help avoid all the particulates that we have to get rid of, that we get out of the water, the radioactive ones?
Well, you still have some amount of that because it's still, it's still Plum Creek and South Platte water that combines at Chatfield. There is there's a significant amount of erosion of those materials that comes down Big Dry Creek. So we'll be able to largely avoid that because that's a point of entry into the system immediately upstream of the Union Ave pump station. Now we also have the Big Dry Creek project that's helping to address that issue too. So we're addressing we're giving ourselves multiple options so that we're not reliant on just one option, and then all of a sudden, if that option goes away, then we have a dramatic change in our source water quality that really makes it harder it just makes it more difficult to switch from a treatment perspective. So it won't totally eliminate it. However, it does improve it because farther upstream, the water is just a little bit better. I think the other thing too is the influence of stormwater. You have streets and stormwater runoff that ends up in that ditch that then gets conveyed to the plant that we then have to treat that. Additionally, enclosing it is from a security perspective, helps protect us from any kind of malicious potential contamination of that source water side, or non-malicious if there was a large diesel spill because of a truck, there's an accident up street, at the end of a street right next to the ditch. So there's a number of reasons why we think that this will protect us and make our system more resilient and improve that source water quality, including the point that you bring on the naturally occurring radioactive material.
That answer your question, Caitlin?
Yes, it did.
Anybody else? Do we have any old business we wish to discuss? How about
Go ahead, sorry. No, go ahead. I was just looking to stop sharing. Sorry.
somebody else had, was that Don's voice in the background there? I guess not. Then we'll move to staff. Does anybody on staff have anything they wish to talk about?
I do have a couple just quick update items if I could share.
Sure.
Okay, we talked, I think it was last month on the connector, or maybe it was 2 months ago, on the connector multiplier analysis that we did. And we came up with a proposed change from 1.05 to 1.2. We then subsequently presented to council during a study session. Out of that meeting, the next step was to meet with the connector districts, which we did that on the 5th of this month. We had a virtual meeting where we went through our methodology, how we came about with the results that we came up with. And essentially what I focused on was 3 main points. One, we are following industry guidance as it relates to this. We're not making this up. This is based on established nationally used industry guidance that many of these connector districts actually utilize. We were being transparent. We gave them our whole model. We gave them the numbers that go into the model. They have the ability to look at it. They have financial consultants that are going over it with a fine-tooth comb. They had a couple questions weren't anything that were really substantial. It was more chipping around the edges of the methodology. And the third thing is in accordance with the agreement. So section 6 of the agreement says the city of Englewood can charge reasonable fees. Doesn't say what reasonable is, but we think by following industry guidance and being fully transparent with our process, that meets the definition of reasonable. Additionally, for the connector districts themselves, they charge these types of extraterritorial multipliers from 1.1 to 1.6 or 1.55, and we are coming in at 1.2. In fact, on 2 of the connector districts in their rules and regulations, theirs is 0.25. And so we are not far out of the range on that. So we had a very good hour-long meeting. I think that everybody appreciated how forthright we were with the information, that we were very open and transparent. There was not a lot of contention because they were able to see our methodology and see that it was sound. At the same time, I would expect that maybe some council members or some people may hear from other city councils like City of Lone Tree, City of Centennial, possibly City of Greenwood Village, because many of these districts are in those municipalities. And I think the district, one of the comments that came up was, what's the process for public input? At which point I said, really, this is a council decision. So if there's a need to provide public input, it's through that venue when we talk through the actual process with the council to officially adopt the change. But one of the feedbacks was, well, you might hear from some of the other council members. I want to make sure that everybody that you're all aware that we told them that if they come up with something that we missed, we are happy to include it, and we will incorporate it. I also said, if it's a matter of, well, yeah, you followed all the rule, you followed the guidance, you're transparent, you followed the rules, but we just don't like it. I said that might be a bit harder of a sell to actually change, because we believe we are entitled based on those 3 things to charge this. And I just wanted to let everybody know that it was not a contentious meeting. It was actually a very good meeting, and that at the same time, if you're a council member, you may hear from your peers at other cities.
Mayor?
Yeah, Peter, who is all there? Can you tell us?
Yeah, so we had the district manager of Southgate, which is, his name's Dave Irish. We had South Englewood Sanitation District. They're represented by Kennedy Jenks, which is a consultant. We had South Arapahoe, which is also represented by Kennedy Jenks. We had Pat Fitzgerald and Cynthia Lane, who manage a number of districts for, most of their districts actually run through Littleton. They have a couple, like I think Belmar and a couple other ones that run through, or Bomar, that run through the city of Englewood. We had a few attorneys, Tim Flynn, who represents a few of the districts, Daryl Farrington, who also represents a few of the districts. We had a consultant that I've worked with for many years, and actually our consultant, Carol, used to work with this gentleman. His name's Jason Mumm. Ironically, they developed the methodology together. So he's analyzing the same methodology that he was part of developing for that we used. So I think there shouldn't be a lot of surprise or shock for them. And then there were a couple other people on there that I was less familiar with, but on some of the smaller districts as well.
So no council members or mayors were on it, just all the.
There may have been one. There may have been one. We can get that for you. In fact, we recorded the meeting, and that should be made available to all council members, I believe, here in the next few days. So if you have, if you're looking for information as to how that meeting went, we wanted you to be at least informed in terms of what the discussion was.
What day was it again?
May 5th.
May 5th, okay. I haven't heard anything, and I'm supposed to be at a mayor's munch tomorrow, but I don't think I'm gonna be able to make it, which is just a general, we get together once a month. have lunch and share things, but I don't think I'm gonna make it, so.
Yeah, the general manager of Southgate, Dave Irish, who, again, colleague of mine, worked really well with him. He had mentioned that he said that some of the city of Lone Tree council members may contact our council members. And he expressed his concern. He didn't necessarily say there was an issue with the methodology. He said he was concerned about the implementation timing to go from 1.05 to 1.2. I reminded him that on the average monthly bill that equates for residential, it equates to $3.41 a month. So while the percentage sounds really big, it's a few dollars a month. But when you multiply that across, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't think we'll hear from them, to be honest, if that's what it is. No, we'll
Well,
see.
he did say that one of the concerns was with the larger, with those larger areas like where Schwab is down like south near C470 and I-25, that some of that commercial area may express some concern because you just amplify it because of the size of the commercial. I
Okay.
think that's more where he's coming from.
That's helpful. Thank you. Mayor Malay and our good friends, so I'll take the heat with her.
Make peace with him.
Yeah, she's
I
great.
want to welcome Miss Wink here. I see she's on board here. Are you there, Cheryl?
Cheryl's absolutely here.
Oh, good. Good to see you this evening.
Well,
All
and
right.
the other important thing on that is the $2.2 million that it generates takes us from needing to fund 75% of that capital or 78% of that capital down to a more manageable 38% debt funded capital. So it really does have an effect on the debt liability that the city of Englewood bears.
Well, on behalf of the board, Peter, we thank you for your efforts on that, and I think good results will come from it probably.
We are hopeful for the same.
Good. Anybody else on staff wish to make comments? Anybody else on the board wish to make any comments? If not, I will call this meeting to adjournment, and we will see you all next month. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.